Rasulullah this to come. And sometimes, not everything is pleasant. Sometimes you have to go to ziyarat, and there's danger in that ziyarat. Sometimes you go to the masjid, there might be, dangers in that masjid. And everyone knows for themselves what best to do. We can't judge them. They know the best to do. But those that are present here, I would like to thank you. And sincerely, I'm sure that Rasulullah thanks you, because he is the father of Lady Fatima alayhi salam. And a father cannot be indifferent when it comes to the daughter. As I said, when you go to your funeral, you see always the immediate family members are right outside the door. And especially when you go to a funeral when someone is young, you see that type of funeral is different than other types of funerals. We were at the majlis of Lady Fatima alayhi salam, that she has been martyred at the age of 18. So I'm sure that Rasulullah will give you inayat, and this is Masjid al-Nabi, this is named for the Prophet of Islam. And the best way to make the Prophet of Islam happy is to remember his daughter, Lady Fatima, which is a part of him. Bad'atun minni, man adaha adani. Whoever bothers her, whoever upsets her, whoever abuses her, has abused me. We're talking about seeking wisdom through the speech of Lady Fatima alayhi salam and sermon of Fadak, a speech, a lecture that has been recorded by Ibn Tayfur in about 200 Hijri, which is a Sunni source in the book of Balaghatul Nisa. There are different sections in this khutbah, and I recommend for you during this time to review this khutbah. It's not too long, but there's different categorizations and different parts. The first part last year, which I spoke about, was about Tawheed and the oneness of God through the speech of Lady Fatima alayhi salam. And remember, when you hear these lines and parts of the speech, it's not a speech that was prepared and written, you could say, or others wrote the speech for her. It was a speech at that time, the tragedy, the taking away Fadak from her, taking away Ali alayhi salam from his walayat, that people did not attend the funeral of her father. And Rasulullah did not have a funeral, a public funeral, as how he was expected to have the entire city of Medina come. It was just Imam Ali alayhi salam, a few people, while they were fighting for power. So we understand that during such a time and during such pains, Lady Fatima alayhi salam gave this speech. And it really shows that her knowledge is knowledge of God. It is not knowledge that has been taught. It is a different type of knowledge. And I want you to, when we go through this, to look at the wisdom that this lady, the daughter of Rasulullah, and infallible Ma'suma Fatima alayhi salam gives. So we reached this part. We talked about the section of God. Last night we talked about the section of how she introduces Risalat and prophethood of her father. And today she is going to talk about some of the philosophies and wisdoms behind the taklif that we have, behind some of the obligations that God has given us. So before she even talks about, you could say, Fadak and her rights, she gives us an encyclopedia of ma'arif and understanding the world. So here she starts with this. Talks about the wisdom of rulings. فَجَعَلَ اللَّهَ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُمْ مِنَ الشِّرْكِ. Faith has been set to cleanse you from polytheism. So the philosophy and the wisdom behind Iman is that it cleanses us from shirk. Now this is something interesting for us to know, is that many times you hear narrations and it talks about the philosophy behind an action. A lot of times that is not al-illa at-tama, the complete cause. It is just a benefit. It's talking about the benefits, or it's talking about the wisdom of that action. For example, when you talk about Sawm, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Sawm is good because it causes taqwa, or sometimes Sawm is good because fasting is good because it is healthy for you. These are hikmah of fasting. We might not necessarily know the exact illah and cause, but we know the benefits that is mentioned. So when we go through these hikmah, and as you go through the hikmah of Nahj al-Balagha, notice that this is wisdom. Wisdom, hikmah, is different than illah. Wisdom is that benefit that you're receiving. It's not what's causing that thing to be wajib necessarily. So it's interesting here. So we could say here, maybe you say the wisdom, the hikmah, not necessarily the philosophy, the hikmah, the wisdom, not the cause. Behind Iman is to stay away and to be cleansed from shirk. Very beautifully, if you think about it, before our ahkam and before the divine laws reach us, and she talks about this, she talks about the purpose of all of this is Iman. The purpose of all of this is to stay away from shirk, to stay away from polytheism. So when she talks about Salat and talks about the philosophy behind Salat or the wisdom behind Salat or Hajj or Sawm or these different actions, she first starts with what is part of aqa'id and beliefs, which is more important. So you see the logic behind that. To talk about, well, what is the purpose behind all these actions? It is to take away yourself and be cleansed from shirk, from polytheism. Now, why shirk? What's usually the opposite of Iman? Usually shirk is not disbelief, kufr. Iman and kufr. But here, why? Done commentary, they're asking, why does she say it will purify you from shirk, polytheism? You have tawheed and shirk as opposed to shirk. You have Iman opposed to kufr and disbelief. Some say this one explanation, that the time period before her father came was a time period where there was idol worship. There was, the mushrikeen. So therefore the Prophet came and Iman came and Islam came and rid Arabia of polytheism. So maybe that is one explanation you can give. That Iman is opposed to shirk because Iman is teaching you tawheed. And at that time, the issues that Arabia had was polytheism. Another explanation we can give is that Iman in reality is saving us from shirk, because in reality there's two types of shirk. There's either a shirk that's jali and the shirk that's khafi. Okay. Shirk that is jali, it is real polytheism, goes back to beliefs and aqa'id. Shirk that is khafi goes back to akhlaq and ethics. What's the difference between these two? Shirk that's jali means that you worship another creator. You believe in another creator. You believe in another Lord, which these are haram, these are things that we are opposed to the message of Islam. Or that you believe that, for example, the attributes of God are separate than His essence when it comes to attributes. This is shirk and polytheism, meaning that you're worshipping more than one God. Shirk that's khafi is a shirk that is more in akhlaq, and a lot of times this can be incorporated in the life of a Muslim. And it's not that necessarily shirk that a person leaves Islam. The person is still Muslim if he has this type of polytheism. But it means that their intentions, their worldview is not tawheedi, is not from the oneness of God. It means that some examples, tawakkul, and trusting in Allah is weak. They don't view the world that Allah is truly administrating everything, that Allah is giving the rizq, so their eyes are in other places. Their eyes are, this came from my boss, this came from myself, my smart business plan that I had. They leave that idea that rizq is completely, everything in this world completely is from Allah. Even if we have free will, everything is from God. Even if He permits it, even if I drop this laptop and it falls here, it is from Allah. Because you cannot separate the universe from God. So therefore this would be shirk. So somebody that believes, and this might sometimes happen to us on mistake. We forget sometimes. Something good happens to us. Oh, I think, it's either a skill I have or something that I did. I forget that this is from God, min Allah. So Allah gives permission for everything in this. Whenever evil happens, yes, that is from us. But at the end, this is a result of Him giving permission to have free will. And this is, the life of it, the test that we have in this world. Another example that it's khafi shirk could be examples that a person does riya. A person, shows off in front of others. And he doesn't do something that is sincere in his worship. And he has nifaq and hypocrisy, God forbid. And he does things, as we have in tradition from Rasulullah, that finding shirk is harder than an ant of Mount Safa. that this might exist in us. So we have to examine tonight, are we true muwahhids? Do we truly have tawheed? Sometimes we view the word tawheed as something, okay, I'm a monotheist. That's it. Let's go to the next topic. But when you ask some of the urafa and mystics, they ask, for example, Ayatollah Abdul Karim Kashmiri, describe your teacher for me, Arif, your teacher, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Qadi. And he says in one sentence, because the urafa, a lot of them don't speak much. And he said in one sentence, he was muwahhid. He was muwahhid. Meaning that he really believed, he lived in believing that Allah is his creator, Allah is his Lord, and he should only worship God. He shouldn't worship anybody else. And if he gives respect to others, and if he gives love to others, it is because of God he does that. Even if he loves his children, that love is because God wants that love. So if he separates that, and sometimes a command comes from him to allow your son to go to a battle, for example, as you have in Karbala, to go to a battle, then he has to say, okay, son, go. He can't allow that love of his son to be in front of Allah, opposed to the love of God. So everything we see in what we love, in what we trust, in what we do, is for God. So this is something, sometimes we don't understand the depths of Tawheed. So Lady Fatima alayhi salam, فَجَعَلَ اللَّهَ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. Faith has been sent to cleanse you of polytheism. If you really think of it, how beautiful of a statement this is. True faith and true Iman in God and true worship of God separates you from al-aghyar, anything else but God. Either khafi or jali. Either in beliefs and theology, you can say, or in ethics. That I live a life as a true muwahhid. And Iman has come for this, so that I can only serve Allah. Let's examine our own lives. How many times do we forget, or how many times do we serve others? Or at the end, we worship others, we worship our own nafs, or worship our own desires. How come we can't rid ourselves from shirk that is khafi? And how much do we really believe in that tawheed that is jali, in that manifest tawheed? When you look at shirk, you see, for example, and when you look at Iman, you see how important, and again, I'm talking about the logic of this khutbah, that before she talks about Salat and fasting and Sawm and Hajj and Jihad and all these other things, she talks about that one fundamental principle that if it doesn't exist, your actions won't count. It's Iman. Yes, question, how about non-Muslims? Does it mean that all of them will go into hell or not? No, we're not saying that. We're saying if a person has disbelief, if a person, the hujjat for them is clear, and they choose to oppose God, mu'anidan, they are stubborn, and they oppose God, they know this is right, but they choose to fight against it. They know that Qadir, for example, and in reality that Imam Ali is the wasi of the Prophet, and they choose to fight against this. Or when Shaitan, for example, knows that he has to do prostration to Adam, he doesn't want to do this, he doesn't believe in this lordship of God. This would be an example where a person, his actions will not count anymore. As you see in the Quran, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَرَمَادٍ. The example is that their actions, those that disbelieve, is like ashes. Ashes which the wind blows forcefully on a stormy day. Will there anything be left if ashes get blown? There's nothing left. So the most important condition for actions to count in this formula that we have is Iman. Yes, those that have not heard about Islam truly, those that have not heard about Islam properly, yes, they will be tested in the hereafter. There's a title for them, Mustad'af Fikri, meaning that when it came to their mind, they were weak. They didn't know. They didn't have a chance and opportunity. They didn't have Rasulullah coming for them exactly and explaining everything so that they can deny him. So for them in the hereafter, they will be tested. A lot of times, unfortunately, we haven't done a good job spreading the message of Islam and being able to tell people about God and Rasul and the Prophet. So therefore, that hujjah is not clear for that person. But that person, I said, that they oppose God. They know that the truth exists, and this is the truth. But when they fight against it, they actively fight against this. Yes, their actions will be, like ashes. Or sometimes you have وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَالسَّرَابِ. It's like a mirage. So therefore, this first section is talking about the one most important condition for all the other ahkam and all the other obligations to count. The first is to have Iman. And what is the limit of Iman? Iman. What is the bare minimum of Iman? Iman means this, to believe in what the Prophet of Islam brought for us. That is Iman. Whatever you believe the Prophet of Islam brought, that you believe in his message. Not that you believe in, 10% of it, 30% of it. You believe in his message. Does this mean that those that don't perform and they are Muslim, but they don't pray, they don't do their wajibat, they're non-practicing Muslim, does it mean that they're disbelievers? No. Doesn't mean that they're disbelievers. Because someone can say, I'm lazy. Someone say, okay, I will, I believe in this message. I just, didn't have the time to do it. I don't have, the conditions to do it. But I still believe in the message. It doesn't mean, someone that doesn't practice is a disbeliever. They can still believe in the message. But, they didn't get around to it, or they have other excuses, which is wrong. Which is wrong, but it doesn't mean they're a disbeliever. So the bare minimum of faith is to believe in what the Prophet of Islam brought for us. So that's the first thing. And beautiful lady, Fatima alayhi salam, فَجَعَلَ اللَّهَ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. That God has brought faith for you to cleanse you of polytheism, to cleanse you from worship of others, to cleanse you from worship of yourself. You either worship God or you worship your own desires. You either worship God or you worship others. We have to choose. Because our fitrah was meant, we were made and created to worship. And if you don't put that in the right way, then you're going to worship other things. And you see today in society, some of the idols out there, some of the people there you see social media, people really, they end up worshiping them, they end up following them, and they become their God for them. They start to become like them. They start to act like them. So we have to find which way, an inclination, in which way are we going to go, towards God or others, al-aqiyar. The second part is beautiful as well. So inshallah, we are being encouraged to live a tawheedi life, to worship only Allah. We're encouraged to look at our intentions and to see, is this for showing off? Is this, for myself, or is this for others? One of our ulama, he went on the minbar because there's a time where he felt that the society was so bad and polluted. He told the people that all the prophets came to tell you to stay away from shirk. All the prophets say stay away from polytheism. But I am commanding you to actually do shirk on the minbar, he said. I'm telling you, do shirk. Be a polytheist. And everyone was like, oh, Imam al-Mushrikeen, what is he doing? He told them this, that the situation is so bad, everything is done for others than God. He says, incorporate God a little bit in your life. Mix him a little bit. Do shirk. The other would be ilhad, complete removal of God from your life. He's saying, mix God a little bit in your life. Do some shirk. This is akhlaqan, he's saying. And this is for us. Incorporate a little bit of God. Okay, these things that Lady Fatima are good, but each person has to look at what stage they are. Because the more you examine, you see, oh no, my life is full of intentions that I have that are not godly. Intention that I wanted to show off, or a way that I didn't have tawakkul on God, and I should have had tawakkul. So therefore, you see the importance of the first step is that you see Tawheed is a hierarchy in akhlaq. A hierarchy. There are those that truly they reach a stage like Ahlul Bayt on his own, that there's absolutely nothing else but God. Everything is Him. They're focused on Him, and all their actions are for Him. And that is, the best state to save us from shirk, to save us from polytheism. So that's one problem. And what's the solution? Iman. The more you believe, the more you act, the more good you do, the farther away you'll go from shirk. The second problem that people have, and Lady Fatima is addressing this. Again, this is khutbah Fadak, stealing Fadak. Before all of this, she's mentioning, how the origination of the universe, mentioning, the Prophet of Islam, and mentioning that he was, a prophet and chosen before even being before others were created. Now she talks about another problem, and that we see al-kibr, the problem of pride. And what do you think right now is the answer to pride? How can we get rid of pride and arrogance? وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. Salat, prayers are prescribed to keep you away from pride. What is the relationship between salat, praying, and arrogance and kibr? What is the relationship? One way we can look at this is that when a person doesn't worship God in the way we are constructed, if a person doesn't do sujood and when you actually look and you see how the traditions beautifully from Rasulullah, he talks about لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَجْهٍ وَوَجْهُ دِينِكُمْ الصَّلَاةِ. Everything has a face, and the face of your religion is prayer. The manifestation of your religion, if you want to show a picture, according to this, it is salat. Why? Because salat is ubudiyat. Salat is worship. Salat is servitude. Salat is prostration. Salat is, bowing. Salat is purity and tathir before you talk to God. So therefore, if a person doesn't perform this, and this is the way that Allah, and she understands this because she's connected with divine knowledge, saying, if you do not worship God, if you don't do salat, you will be arrogant. You won't realize that you start bowing to yourself and your own desires. You start becoming boastful. Salat keeps you humble if a person does it right. If you try to imagine an act of worship, if you wanted to draw humility or design humility, could you draw and design it any better than salat? Sujood is one part of salat. They come to the Prophet of Islam, in hadith it has. They come to him and they like Islam. They're actually rich, mashallah, rich businessmen. They came to the Prophet of Islam, they're mushrik. But they wanted to become Muslim, but they said, remove the sujood, we don't like it. And the Prophet in hadith has, La khayra fi deen, laysa fihi ruku' wa sujood. There's no khair in religion if that religion does not have bowing and prostration and sujood. So khair for us is this. And sometimes you forget that salat for you, what an absolute rizq it is for you. That Allah wants you to talk to Him in the most humble and the most complete mannerisms that we can have. It's adab. When you talk to God, you have adab. You practice cleaning yourself, doing wudu, washing yourself. Sometimes Imam Hassan Aysam would shake, in his wudu. And you practice, you hear the call for prayer, and you recite from God's book. You stand in such a way. Amir al-Mu'mineen in hadith has the way he would do salat as a pillar, as a structure, he would be so firm. When he would do ruku', so strongly he would do ruku', sometimes a bird would sit on his back. Very beautiful. Imagine the sujood of Imam Ali, the sujood of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. So you see an absolute illustration of how to be mu'addab and how to have manners in front of God. In one direction, facing Him, reciting, and how things easily become batin in salat, not eating, not drinking. Absolute, perfect manner because He's our Lord, because He is God, and He deserves to be worshipped. Do you see in any other religion such humility and adab and good mannerisms to worship God? So when a person does this, you have to do it in front of everyone. And that's the problem that these rich people had. They didn't want to do it maybe in front of everyone. They don't want to go on the ground in front of everyone. It would be something that would be, a sign of disgrace for them to go down on the ground. But sometimes you look at brothers and you go to universities, at work, it's challenging sometimes. In schools, it's challenging. And they're wondering, what are you doing? You're going on the ground. And sometimes you don't even have a sajjada. It's just a cement. And you see how humble you make yourself to God. So one of the best ways to remove ourselves from kibr is to perform the salat. To perform the salat that, Prophet Musa alayhi salam talked about in the Quran. Prophet Isa alayhi salam talked about as a child. And other prophets, they made dua to make our children of the Musallin, make our progeny of those that are worshippers of God. Allah, how in love He is with Salat. جعل الله جل ثناؤه قرة عيني في الصلاة. He says that my love, the light of my eyes is Salat. This is what I love. And you see, sometimes if you're not really attracted to worship, that's a problem. Our teacher, Sheikh Ahmad al-Mushtari, constantly said if you don't really get attracted too much to worship, he says because you're sick. He says we have sicknesses because when the heart has other inclinations and attractions, that heart is already full. There's nothing else, it's full of the dunya. But the Prophet explains this is how attracted I am to Salat. And this is the Salat that removes us from kibr. It says in the hadith, more than a hungry man that reaches food. I don't know if you've ever starved. If there's a time when you're fasting and you reach food and you want to jump in, the food and push everyone away. Or sometimes you see in, weddings and they have a big table, to go and get, towards the meat first, of course, then the rice and salad. So you see how hungry you are sometimes and how anticipating you are for food. He says, for me, more than that hungry person for food. Or I don't know if how thirsty you were ever. You're hiking or traveling and there's no water, or when you're fasting and you see that, water. And fasting, there's that farah, that lidha, the enjoyment of when you fast, you have iftar, and how great it is. He says, for me, Salat is more enjoyable than a hungry person that reaches food and a thirsty person that reaches water. And says this about it. The hungry man, however satiated he is, he eats, he becomes, satiated, he's full. The thirsty person is quenched when he drinks. He says, but I can never be, satiated. I can never be filled by Salat. Can never be full. When I do Salat, I want to do more Salat and more Salat. So you see the importance and the love that Rasulullah had for Salat. And you see that this is one of the actions that we have to preserve. And you look at the philosophies behind it, it takes us away from kibr and arrogance. Why? Because that action of not performing Salat or not performing Salat correctly is the action of Satan. When you think about one of the attributes of Shaitan, you say that he is of the mustakbirin. That Shaitan did not want to worship God anymore after he left the realm of Ubudiyyah. And if a person becomes arrogant, he is attaining one of the most detrimental attributes of Shaitan, which is arrogance. Arrogance when it comes to God's worship. Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he talks about Shaitan, he says that Shaitan quarreled with Allah with the robes of greatness, al-Jabriyya, and then with ta'azzuz, he had the dress of pride, and وَخَلَعَ قِنَاءَ التَّذَلُّلِ, and took off the coverings of humility. Shaitan took off the coverings of humility. He put on the dress of pride, and he had the robe of greatness. So one of the most scary, we can say, attributes of Shaitan is that he is mustakbir. He is arrogant. Why? Because he absolutely now opposes the worship of God. So we need Salat, we need worship, and this worship at the same time is purifying us from being, mutakabbir, taking us and humbling us. Each Salat that we do, it balances us. Or else insan without Salat, Islam, a person without Salat, a person without Iman will have inclinations towards polytheism and have inclinations towards arrogance. You see, in general, the Quran has كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. Insan will rebel because he sees himself self-sufficient. And this has been the historic mistake of man, that he has seen himself as being self-sufficient. He has not done sujood to God. Let's continue. Was zakat. Then she talks about the hikmat of zakat. وَالزَّكَاةِ تَزْكِيَةً لِلنَّفْسِ وَنَمَاءً فِي الرِّزْقِ. And charity has been prescribed to purify oneself, to make someone grow. You know, zakat, when given, you can say khums is part of this. When you give charity in the way of Allah, you're purifying your money, you're purifying your life. Because that's what zakat means, is tazkiyah. وَنَمَاءً فِي الرِّزْقِ. Actually, a lot of people, they think when they give khums, when they give zakat, they think that it's going to be less. But actually in this hadith, and Lady Fatima is talking about, it's going to increase us in sustenance. وَالصِّيَامِ تَثْبِيتًا لِلْإِخْلَاصِ. How beautifully she says. And fasting, the hikmah of fasting is that it can continue you and could cause you to be in ikhlas and sincerity. How does siyam and fasting make us be more sincere? So we have acts of worship that are ijabi, acts of worship that we do, and they can be corrupted because there could be, fakeness in that. Someone can be not sincere. You could show off. I gave that example of that lady, old lady that was always praying, and they say, "MashaAllah, look at her all the time. She's doing salat." And they kept talking, to each other. "Look at that lady. Look, she's praying. MashaAllah, the entire day she's been here praying." And she couldn't take it anymore. She says, she breaks her prayer and says, "You don't know, I'm fasting too." She shows off. Sometimes those ijabi, those things actions that you do, it can have that, riyah in it. It can have insincerity. But fasting, you see how beautifully Lady Fatima says, fasting brings ikhlas, because as-sawmu li, we have in the hadith. Sawm is for me. Because you're depriving yourself from water, you're depriving yourself from drink. How can you really show off as much, when you're doing something that's salbi, that you're just refraining. That's what, siyam is, to refrain from these things. You're taking yourself from the most essential needs that you have, which is food and drink. And therefore it causes that ikhlas, being starving, being thirsty. It causes you, and says, Allah watches them and says, this person is only doing this for me. So therefore you see each action, how beautifully she mentions. So Iman helps us stay away from shirk. Salat takes us away from kibr. Zakat, it helps us in tazkiyah of the nafs, of ourselves, and increases our rizq. Siyam and fasting from ikhlas. وَالْحَجَّ تَشْدِيدًا لِلدِّينِ. And Hajj, it establishes religion. Whenever they want to take a photo of Muslims, they show Hajj. They show the Kaaba. And how beautifully the hikmah, you can say, is to show the power and establish how great Islam is in Hajj. وَالْعَدْلِ تَنْسِيقًا لِلْقُلُوبِ. Justice is prescribed to establish proper harmony in the hearts. وَطَاعَتَنَا نِظَامًا لِلْمِلَّةِ. And the obligation to obey us, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, has been prescribed to set up order in the community. You have been ordered to follow Ahlul Bayt so they can be the imams. And they can give order to the millah. They can be the imams and they can govern society. So the time period that we're at is the time of occultation. But the original design and how Allah wanted, the irada of Allah, the irada, you can say tashri'iyah of Allah, that He wanted Imam Ali to be followed, then Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, so they can take possession of the government of Islam, government of the world. If they were followed, they would organize the world in such a way that there would be no poverty, there wouldn't be people that are sick in the way that we see, there wouldn't be discrimination. And we see how when Imam Mahdi Ajjallahu Ta'ala Faraja comes back, you see there will be this nidam, there will be this prescribed order in the community. وَإِمَامَتَنَا أَمَانًا لِلْفُرْقَةِ. And the authority has been prescribed to save the differences. Then later on, I'm going to have you, inshallah, if you want, to read more of the ahkam and philosophies of ahkam in Khutbah Fadakiyya, to understand the fact that all of these obligations that Allah has given us is for ourselves. And all of them have benefit. But unfortunately, many of us have not realized, that there's such great benefit in all these wajibat and such great mafsada in these muharramat, these things that Allah has for us. Let's recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal fajr. If you can dim the lights. So inshallah we ask Allah to take us away from shirk, from kibr, arrogance, and take us towards ikhlas, inshallah. When you look at one of the ziyarats of Lady Fatima alayhi salam, and you say salams to her, Ya mumtahana, imtahanaki Allah alladhi khalaqak, qabla an yakhlaqak. You see, in the ziyarat, the Lady Fatima alayhi salam was tested very clearly, was tested before He created you, before bringing you to this world. That she, in a way that we don't know necessarily, was tested in the other world. Then she was brought to this world. فَوَجَدَكِ لِمَمْتَحَنَكِ صَابِرًا. And Allah saw you that you were sabir, that you were enduring during those trials. Maybe why? Because He knew that when God would send her, she would have lots of trials and tribulations. That she was tested once, and Allah saw her sabira, and then brought her to this world. Then you see, continuing, it says, فَإِنَّا نَسْأَلُكِ إِن كُنَّا صَدَّقْنَاكِ. Thus we ask you, Ya Lady Fatima, we ask you, and you're addressing her directly, that if we really do tasdeeq of you, we really believe in you, إِلَّا الْحَقْتِنَا بِتَصْدِيقَنَا لَهُمَا. That you include us and you attach us to those two. You attach us to Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali. Meaning that the connection between us and Imam Ali and Salam, according to the ziyarat, is her. She connects us with Rasulullah. She connects us because it's the daughter of Rasulullah, and she's very similar to Rasulullah. She connects us with Ali ibn Abi Talib because she's the defender of the wilayat of Imam Ali. So brothers and sisters, tonight, if you wanted Salat of the Nabi, if you want the Imamat of Ali alayhi salam, connect to Lady Fatima, as in this ziyarat, she connects us to Salat and Imamat. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in such a night, you see, before when he would see Lady Fatima, he was very happy to see her when she was healthy. وَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَنْظُرُ إِلَيْهَا فَتَنْكَشِفُ عَنِّي الْهُمُومُ وَالْأَحْزَانُ. When I would look, my humum, my grief would be removed when I would see her. But now when Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is seeing Lady Fatima, we talked about in such a night like tonight, she passed away. Now it is time for the ghusl and takfeen and tahneet of Lady Fatima. It is time for Imam Ali alayhi salam to say goodbye to her. But she is happy because we have in the hadith that when Rasulullah told her something, she was sad. And when he told her something else, she was happy. He told her that soon I will be leaving, but you will be the first one to join me. Now Rasulullah is happy that his daughter is joining her. And from all the dhulm and oppression that she had, she's going to be separated from this world of oppression. But she's going to be leaving Ali alayhi salam. The Ali that every time he would see her, he would forget, and his gham was removed. Fatemiyya is Ashura. Her uprising was very successful. Her uprising today, brothers and sisters, we are in debt to Lady Fatima because we are here because of her. If she did not stand up against the usurpers, if she did not make it clear, maybe we would not be here. They wouldn't be followers of Imam Ali. She is a sign of the victory. The fact that you are here right now, it is a sign of the victory of Lady Fatima, that she gave her life for walayat, and walayat was preserved. They say that Allamiyya Amini was in Medina, one of our great scholars. And also, his entire life was about Imam Ali. He wrote Al-Ghadir. He studied about Imam Ali, to defend Imam Ali. They asked him, when you were in Medina, when you went throughout, Baqi, for example, or the Prophet's grave, or different parts in Medina, the streets of Medina, do you see from your soul, knowledge of the soul, do you see anywhere that you think it might be clear that this might be the grave of Lady Fatima? It is said that he said that he became very upset and began to cry. He said, when I went to Medina, all of Medina, I felt that dhulm and oppression and all throughout the entire city. Because in one part of that city, one part of the streets, it is where possibly Lady Fatima fell on the ground and was scrambling on the ground to defend Imam Ali alayhi salam. And one part of that city, she had Baytul Ahsan and would cry day and night because they said that she is crying too much, the people of Medina. She said of Baytul Ahsan, the house of grief. So all of Medina, Allama Amini says, it is the house of grief for me, it is a place of grief. Such a night we say that the duty of Lady Fatima is done. Her defense of Imam Ali is done. And now she will be joining Rasulullah. Rasulullah is waiting for her, but Imam Ali is doing ghusl of Lady Fatima. How hard is it to do ghusl? A husband is doing ghusl of his wife and discovers the bruises and injuries that were possibly hidden from him. That when he is washing her holy body, as the poet said, Ali, how can you remain alive? How did you stay alive, Ali alayhi salam, after this funeral procession of her? That you realize what they have done and the injuries they did to your wife. We see that Imam Ali alayhi salam, as we have in the wasiyat of Lady Fatima alayhi salam, that she wants Imam Ali alayhi salam when she says, هذا ما أوصت به فاطمة بنت محمد and I tashhadu an la ilaha illallah, her wasiyat, her will, wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasul, wa anna al-jannah haq, and I bear witness that the paradise is true, wa naru haq, and the hellfire is true, wa anna sa'a atiya la rayba fiha, the day of judgment is true, there's no doubt about it, wa anna Allah yub'athu man fil qubur, and Allah will resurrect those that are in the graves. Ya Ali, this is my will. Ana Fatima bint Muhammad. So Imam Ali was reading the will of his wife. This is me, Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. Zawajani Allah minka la'akuna laka fi dunya wal akhirah. So that I can be, Allah married me with you. Our marriage was with Allah, was through Allah. So that I can be for you in the dunya and the akhirah. And then it mentions, Hanitni wa ghasilni wa kafidni bil layl. Do tahnit of me, do ghusl of me, and do kafan of me at night time, Ali. How much dhulm happened to her that she does not want anyone to know when about her funeral procession. She doesn't want anyone to come. What did the people of Medina do to her that they were not invited? Wa kafidni bil layl wa salli alayya. And pray upon me. Prepare my body, do ghusl, tahnit, shroud me. وَأَدْفِنِّي بِاللَّيْلِ. But when it comes to my burial, bury me privately. Bury me at night. وَلَا تُعْلِمْ أَحَدًا. And do not tell anybody. Then it says, وَقْرَأْ عَلَى وُلْدِ السَّلَامِ إِلَىٰ قِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Ayatollah Wahid says this to those that are Sadat, to all those that are in a way related to Lady Fatima. Send my salams to them until the day of judgment. All my children, send my salams to them. She sent salam to you, those that are Seyyed, those that are Sadat. She sent her salam. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is now burying Lady Fatima. A few people are there. It is maybe 7 people, they say. Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Imam Ali alayhi salam is there. Salman, Miqdad, Abu Dhar, a few people. See, Rasulullah didn't have a funeral like this. Lady Fatima didn't have a funeral. Imam Ali alayhi salam didn't have a funeral. Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam in general did not have a funeral. Imam Hassan had a funeral, and you see with the way that they shot arrows at his holy body. And of course, Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not have a funeral. So this is the Madloom. They were like their mother, Az-Zahra. This is, you see, Salman, Miqdad, Abu Dhar. It's there. And you see the statements of Ali alayhi salam, وَاخْتُلِسَتْ الزَّهْرَى, meaning that Zahra has been taken away from me. Zahra has been stolen from me. Ali says, alayhi salam. فَلَقَدْ اسْتُرْجَعَتَ الْوَدِيعَ. And now, Rasulullah, I am giving back this trust. You trusted me with your daughter, now I am giving her back to you. I'm giving back the trust. وَأُخِذَتِ الرَّهِينَ. And now I have to give her back. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is burying Lady Fatima alayhi salam in a night like this. Nobody is knowing, very private. Maybe only 7 people are there. Khayru, the best women that have ever been created, the best women. There Imam Ali alayhi salam says, فَلَمَّا نَغَذَ يَدَهُ مِن تُرَابِ الْقَبْرِ. Now his hands are in the grave. And he lifts his hands from the grave. حَاجَ بِهِ الْحُزْنِ. Now they say that Imam Ali, some say that he's about 33 years of age. But after this, they say his hair became full of white hair, gray hair. He did not have any dark hair anymore. Ali alayhi salam has now inkisar, he is broken. And you see in the hadith it says, فَأَرْسَلَ دَمُوَهُ عَلَى خَدَّيْهِ. And you see the tears of Awwal Madloom coming down on his cheeks. Ya Ali, you buried your wife Fatima Zahra in such a way. But la yawm ka yawmaka ya Aba Abdullah. But your son Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala, he did not have a funeral. You were there, Hassan was there, Hussein was there. But your son Hussein will be very gharib, he will be estranged. He will be martyred thirsty without water given to him. He will be trampled with horses after he is martyred. He will be beheaded and left alone in the desert of Karbala. This is your son, Ya Zahra. This is your son, Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is the night of the ziyarat of Imam Hussein. And we ask Allah, inshallah, because of Lady Fatima, to give us ziyarat of Imam Hussein and give us Karbala, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us Hajj, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us Iman that takes us away from Shirk. We ask you, Ya Allah, to give us Salat that takes us away from Kibr and arrogance. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us Siyam that takes us away from insincerity and takes us towards Ikhlas. Ya Allah, all those that have defended the shrines of Ahlul Bayt, either physically or intellectually, may Allah bless their souls, inshallah. Ya Allah, all those that have, in the way of Islam, have helped the mu'mineen, inshallah, that have helped out in this masjid, either providing tea, setting things up, or help organizing this event, give them, inshallah, reward of the majlis of Lady Fatima alayhi salam to the marhumeen, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you, the founder of this masjid, Allah may bless him and take him with Lady Fatima Zahra, inshallah. Ya Allah, forgive our sins and give us, inshallah, the opportunity to serve our Imam of age, Imam Zaman, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها بعدد ما أحاط به الملك. هيدر هيدر باز مشغول کاری با لبخند که انگار نه انگار که ازت دوتا دنده شکسته بین در و دیوار بین در و دیوار چه شده پهلوت کبوده بازود چه برم داره گوشه ابرود ای جان مادر بی کس مادر ای جان مادر، بی کس مادر. چی شده پهلود، کبوده بازود، چه ورم داره گوشه ابرود. ای جان مادر بی کس مادر، ای جان مادر بی کس مادر. بگید ای جان مادر بی. تشریف برید جلو چند دقیقه خیلی کوتاه. ای جان مادر بی کس مادر، ای جان مادر بی کس مادر، ای جان
پرم شکسته مثل کبوتر، پرم شکسته مثل کبوتر، دلم گرفته کجایی مادر. پرم شکسته مثل کبوتر، پرم شکسته مثل کبوتر، دلم گرفته کجایی مادر. پرم شکسته کبوتر، پرم شکسته مثل کبوتر. زندم به بوی چادر نمازت، زندم به یاد راز و نیازت. کشتی منو با قد خمیده روی کبود و رنگ پریده. شبها بدون تو چه سرده، قلبم پر از عذاب و درده. مادر دلم هوا تو کرده، 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 مادر دلم هوا تو کرده. مادر دلم هوا کرده. یه وقتا از آه میسوز سینم، شکر خدا راهی از مدینم. انگاری الان دارم میمیرم که مادرم میبره منو رو پاش گذاشته سر منو میگیره با آستین خودش اشک چشای تر منو اشک چشای تر منو شبها بدون تو چه سرده قلبم پر از عذاب و درده مادر دلم هوا تو کرده 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 دلم هوا تو کرده مادر دلم هوا تو کرده مادر دلم هوا تموم این درد با من میمونه تموم این درد با من میمونه غمت منو کشت تو راه خون این زخم کهنه درمون نمیشه رازی که دارم پنهون نمیشه افتادی رو خاک مثل قبالم دیوار کوچه شد باقلال قربت از آسمون میبارید ابرام با چشماشون میبارید دیوار برات خون میبارید قربت از آسمون میبارید ابرا با چشماشون میبارید دیوار برات خون میبارید مادر دلم هوا تو کرده مادر دلم هوا تو کرده مادر یه عمر از درد میسوزه قلبم به کوچه ها چشم میدوزه قلبم چی اومد اونجا به روز قلبم کوه مصیبت رو دوشم صدای سیلی تو گوشم دلیل این که همیشه تو آتیش غیرت می جوشم کوه مصیبت رو دوشم صدای سیلی تو گوشم دلیل این که همیشه تو آتیش غیرت می جوشم شبها بدون تو چه سرده قلبم پر از عذاب و درده مادر دلم هوا تو کرده 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 مادر حسن غریبه کریم دنیاست حسن غریبه کریم دنیاست حسن تمام وجود زهراست میرا عباس زهراست صبر و قرارش رفته به مادر حتی مزارش بال ملائک گل دسته هاشم خاک مدینه ایوون تلاش دست کریم آل حیدر نور مدینه پیامبر جانم حسن غریب مادر جانم حسن غریب مادر جانم حسن غریب مادر جانم حسن غریب مادر جانم حسن غریب روزه مادر شهادت اینم وصیت من به زینب اینم اشکات بمونه برا حسینم اوریان میشه پیکر حسین به نیزه میره سر حسین دل همه زیر و رو میشه با ناله مادر حسین با ناله مادر حسین یه مادری که با ناله تو دریای گوداله میسوزه برا داغ ته پر لاله جانم حسین غریب مادر 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 جانم حسین غریب مادر
تماس دعا آتش زدن به خانه مولا بهانه بود. سفره مجلس از زهرا امشب جمع میشه، انشالله که همه حاجت روا بشید، دست خالی از این مجلس نریم بریم انشالله. آتش زدن به خانه مولا بهانه بود، مقصود خصم کشتن بانوی خانه بود. از آن به باب وی لگد زد عدو که دید جان علی به پشت در آستانه بود. وای کاش روز حادثه در پشت در زهرا نبود، شاهد پهلو شکستن زینب کبرا نبود. یا صاحب الزمان کاش وقت در شکستن پای دشمن می شکست تا که میخه در نشان پهلوی زهرا نبود. یا فاطمه الزهرا یا قرة عین الرسول یا سیدتنا و مولاتنا انا توجهنا و استشفعنا و توسلنا بک الله. خانوم هر کدوم ما حاجت داریم، گرفتاری، خانوم دست ما رو بگیر. یا سیدتنا و مولاتنا انا توجهنا و استشفعنا و توسلنا بک الله و قدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیهة عند الله. یا وجیهة عند الله. الا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. وجل الله في فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين. یه بار دیگه به نیابت دوستانی که میخواستن بیان به خاطر این کرونا نتونستن بیان. السلام علی الحسین و علی اولاد الحسین ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا ثامن الحجاج يا علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى شمس الشموس يا أنيس النفوس يا مدفون ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أبا صالح المهدي أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك. الأمان 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 زمان. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. سفارش دعا 3 مرتبه آیه شریفه رو می‌خونیم قبل از اینکه مجلس ختم بکنیم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أما يجيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلوات.